Okay, well, thank you all for joining. I have the wonderful privilege of introducing our speaker Lia. Let me give you a little bit about her background. Lia develops and manages award-winning sustainable initiatives for organizations with a focus on reducing single-use plastics. She is very interested in pursuing climate neutral and B Corporation certifications, implementing circular economy strategies, and engaging entire brand ecosystem in these efforts. She's the managing principal of Planet+Purpose Solutions, a woman-led B Corp certified boutique consulting practice whose impact is felt globally and spans on immense variety of organizations and industry. By launching organizational sustainable strategies, pursuing third-party certifications, establishing product and packaging stewardship initiatives, building sustainable corporate ethos through employee engagement, and aligning clients with cause partners. Lia and her team accelerate solutions to some of the world's greatest environmental challenges. So that's kind of her business side, but I also wanted to talk about some of her background. Lia was inspired by this intersections of brands and purpose after working around the world with international groups, including the PGA Tour, World Surf League, and later with ocean conservative organizations, including the Surfrider Foundation and the 5 Years Institute to address the rise of plastic pollution. She's originally from the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii. She attended the University of Southern California, where she played varsity water polo and graduated with a degree in broadcasting journalism and anthropology. She has an MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management at Arizona State University. She's an adjunct professor at the College of Charleston School of Business, a climate ambassador for the city of Charleston, South Carolina, and a member of the Green Commission for the town of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. She's now living in Charleston, South Carolina, and loves to explore the oceans and waterways around the Low Country with her family. So, as you can see, we have a great person who will be speaking to us. I just wanted to do a couple of little housekeeping things. Lia really wants us to be interactive. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And I will be monitoring the chat. And if there are questions, we'll go ahead, and if it permits time, we'll go ahead and answer those questions. And we just, once again, want this to be very interactive. So with that, I will turn it over to Lia.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to join you all. Marianne and I met at the Miami International Boat Show, where I was working with one of my clients, Costa Sunglasses, on our Kick Plastic event. We work with the boat show to reduce the amount of single-use plastic there. And so she told me about this group, and I was just elated to find out that there was a sustainable events network, first of all, because I used to work in international events in the sports, in sports. So it's really fun to be here and join you all. So as Marianne said, I am hoping that this is a conversation. And so I'm going to start out with some questions that we can work through together, and just feel free to write in the chat or kind of raise your hand or interrupt if you have any questions at all during the presentation. So I'll go ahead and get that started. So thanks again for this opportunity to be with you all today. And should I let Vicky in, Marianne?
Oh, I'll go ahead and do
it. Okay. All right. So like I said, I really wanted to start with some questions, right? And let me open up that chat so I can see if the chat box. So if any thoughts come in, please share. It would be really helpful if I could understand what intrigued you about today's conversation. Why did you decide to join? Do you have something that's top of mind around sustainability? I'd like to think of this as a safe space that you can sort of share. You have a client that is being demanding around single-use plastics. How do you manage that with your values? I'm just making that up. Is there anything that especially called you to this conversation?
Well, I am tuned in because I did a sustainable roadmap once for the site where I'm the sustainability VP for, but I only did it once, and I, did it. I don't know if I did it right or if that's the way to do it, if there's other ways to do it. So I did it. It's a nice roadmap, but I'm curious to see what other ways you do it.
Okay, so as we go through this, let's bring your experience into the conversation.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any other thoughts to share so I could help speak to it during this conversation? All right, then I'm going to keep on going. Let me just make sure I'm trying to stretch out my window of who's on the line so I can see all of you. All right, so I can now. So the next question is, every organization was founded with a purpose in mind, right? And so this question here, what is the purpose of your organization? I was giving a talk to the endurance industry, and there was a gentleman that raised his hand when I asked this question of the audience, and he rolled out his purpose statement, and I was able to say, "You're with REI, aren't you?" Right? So it was really like your purpose actually really matters. A lot of people can say, "Here's what Patagonia's purpose is. We're in business to save our home planet." Things like that. So does anyone have an organizational purpose that they feel comfortable sharing on the call today? And it's okay if you don't, because we're going to talk about purpose, because every organization should have a purpose. In fact, the purpose of Planet+Purpose Solutions is to equip current and future leaders to be champions of change. That's all of you out there. You're obviously current leaders with your businesses and the roles that you have. And so we want our goal, like we can't, business is booming for us, and we can't tackle it all. We really want to make change makers out of every single interaction that we have, provide tools like this opportunity for you all to drive change within your spheres of influence. So this is a little bit about what we do. We started out, oddly, it was fun. My background, as Marianne shared, led me down this road to become a subject matter expert around marine plastic pollution when I worked in ocean conservation. And a lot of brands out there, fast-moving consumer good companies, were saying, how can we tackle plastic pollution, right? What can we do better? And that's where I had a consulting practice kind of. I'm like, I think I can do this, and starting a business is scary, as many of you know. And, but I did it, and it's been since 2017. And we branched out from providing packaging and single-use plastic, like within your office operations or events, solutions to that, to organizational sustainability, strategic partnerships, communications and reports. We also have global partnerships that we bring in, and we work with a variety of industries. So not only am I going to tell stories about our work with Costa Sunglasses, but I'm going to bring in a lot of different industries that we work with: logistics, the communications industry, pharmaceutical, pet industry. It's just clean beauty, apparel, eyewear. It's the same practices, but just kind of different data sets. And as you can tell, I really enjoy my work. So let's kind of get down to the nitty-gritty. When you are looking at how to shape a sustainability strategy, and I don't know what all your businesses are, but I can tell that you have your own businesses, or you and your clients have really big businesses that are going to be impacted by this word sustainability. There's going to be sort of a interconnection between you all to drive some kind of impact. What that impact is a conversation. And starting that conversation is right here. What kind of pressure points are you as a business, or are your clients feeling, where they need to, they're like, we have to do something about sustainability, right? Like, but that's a huge, broad scope of work, and we got to narrow that down. So sometimes it starts with, and our teams identify these 6 pressure points, but it starts with employees, right? Talent, and really wants to work for organizations that are making a difference. They want to feel connected to the company's mission and purpose. And there's a lot of data out there that is basically saying younger talent is going to give up great opportunities with companies if they don't align with the values. And those values are in the theme of around the sustainability. So, how is your company making the world a better place? And talent, younger talent, is expecting an answer. Consumers, clients, there's this trend that there's a demand for authentic and transparent sustainability initiatives. For brands, there's an opportunity to increase, we call it net promoter score, NPS. It's sort of a ranking that says how popular your brand is, and brand engagement to drive these long-term results. So consumers are demanding that organizations take action around sustainability. And we're going to define sustainability, this nebulous word, in a few slides. Investors are looking at sustainable business practices with a sharp eye, because when a company embeds sustainability, environmental, social governance practices within their organization, that's just a sign that that organization is buttoned up and it understands its impacts, their environmental impacts, their social impacts, but mostly it understands the risks that it has, the business risks around it. And so investors know these companies are buttoned up, and there's a huge pool of money that is moving over to companies that can demonstrate authentic sustainability initiatives. In the world that I occupy, retailers are asking for sustainability benchmarks, and our brands that are selling in stores like, as I mentioned earlier, REI, Target, Walmart, what kind of impact are the brands bringing into the stores? Because the store chains, right, they also are tracking their sustainability, and all the brands that are being sold ladder up to their gross impact. So they are starting to ask brands, what's your carbon emissions, right? How much water did you use to create this product, like these jeans, things like that. So it's starting, the details really matter here, and retailers are putting pressure on brands. So if any of you are working with brands and big multinational corporations on events, trying to understand what are brands measuring, like reading brands' impact reports will give you an inside edge on what they care about, right? So when you read a brand's impact report, it's divided into, how they treat their people, right? How they work with their suppliers, what are their environmental impacts? And if you read it, you'll see some themes, like with Costa sunglasses, as Marianne knows, there's a huge trend to reduce the amount of single-use plastic that brand uses within its organization, within its events. And then they're sort of harnessing the power of their brand ecosystem, all the different, it's their entire value chain, essentially, to help them reduce the amounts of single-use plastic. Why? Well, the impact report and the website will tell you they are focused on protecting the watery world, and single-use plastic leads to marine plastic pollution. And so that's kind of, if you're looking to work with Costa, you'll know right away when the executives are walking into a conference room, they don't want to see single-use plastic water bottles at the conference table, right? So that's kind of gives you a little inside knowledge about how brands are caring, or your clients are caring about sustainability. Brands, not only is it because of employees, communities, the investor opportunities, demands by retailers, or if they're in the supply chain of a big organization like a multinational corporation, like a Boeing or a Volvo, BMW, something like that, that needs to understand the impacts of their entire supply chain. Policy is asking brands, what are their sustainability data points, and what are they doing to reduce their impacts? So there's a lot of policy in Europe that is asking these really tough questions. So if an American brand is doing business across the Atlantic, they need to adhere to EU rules, depending on their size, of course. So that's another big pressure point that you all should be aware about. And then lastly, we see this all the time. It's a case in point, right? Organizations are are working together through these trade associations to scale their impact and learn from each other, because this is like, to make the world a better place, we all have to work together. And it's not like some secret sauce that you need to keep all to yourself. We will drive change faster if we're working together. And so this conference webinar is exactly what we're hoping to achieve. So it's always thrilling to speak with all of you. All right, so now that you're feeling the pressure point, does anyone have actually, let me back up a slide. Does anyone have any questions about these pressure points, or feel like talking about a pressure point that they may be experiencing? It's okay if not.
I wanted to bring up something. So, my paying job is working with the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so we're a marketing organization, and we have a lot of environmental that is part of our destination. We're right on Biscayne Bay. We're also the Atlantic Ocean. We have the Everglades. So there is a lot of pressure from, outside organizations and also ecotourism, people asking us, well, what are you doing as a destination to be more sustainable? So we feel a lot of pressure to try to accelerate this, when at the end of the day, it's not us, it is all the organizations within our destination. So, we're now just starting to try to bring in the community into this conversation.
And it's exactly, that's how it is. It's very organic, right? And you meet people and organizations where they're at, where they're ready to have these conversations, where they feel a visceral impact, like people seeing marine plastic pollution washing up on the shores, right? Okay, there's a dotted line to how that gets there. How can I drive the change? And so that collective action, like you're saying, you have to, you gotta walk them there, don't shock them there is a great expression that we use. So starting with the passion points that they have, that's a great place to get going. Like identify a gap that needs to be addressed, because it is so challenging. When you start to assess your organization, it is a very daunting thing. And you just where to start, what you just shared is a great how to start. All right, so let's talk about purpose. And I'm going to follow up here. I'm going to stick this in the chat. So I prepared a blog on my website that has a lot of resources for you. And there's this idea of purpose. It's sort of the call to action of your organization. It's slightly different than a mission. And if you look at the resources on the blog, because we don't have a lot of time to I could spend a whole hour talking about how do you identify your purpose, right? But so there's opportunities on the blog for great learnings and exercises. But purpose is why your organization exists, right? So as we started at the top of the call, every organization was founded for a reason. The founder saw an opportunity, a gap in the market, right? They were trying to solve a problem, essentially. So if your organization is generations old, it's often very helpful if you're like, I know what our mission is. That's more business focused, to dominate our industry, things like that. But purpose is this higher calling that really is attractive to talent and your customers and your supply chain. It's a great storytelling opportunity, for why your organization exists, ultimately beyond making money. Of course, making money is important. Otherwise, you don't have a company, right, that does all these other great things. So there's a little tweak there. But what is the North Star? What is your guiding point? And if you go on to the blog, you can pull down some of the resources to help you talk with your team about how do we create a purpose statement, like the one I shared about us at the top of the call. That's the pinnacle point, a through line that helps your strategy come into being. The next level of depth is your corporate responsibility aspects. So many of you are already doing this, right? If you have a recycling program, if you have office like timers at your office or dimmers for the lights, or you turn the copy machine off, or you don't have any single-use plastics at the office, or you donate to philanthropic organizations or have volunteer days, that's toe in the water, starting to create a vibe, right? This ethos that our organization cares. What do we care about, right? What causes are we supporting? Things like that. So this starts kind of that journey that you want to meditate on. What aligns with your brand focus area? But the really deep dive, and this is where we work, is in this idea of ESG, environmental social governance. And this was actually a finance term that popped into place about, oh goodness, now 15 to 18 years ago. And it was, as I stated earlier, a way to understand how buttoned up are these companies? How are they being run, right? What kind of governance practices are they engaged in? And what kind of policies are governing the organization? Who is governing the organization? How transparent is that company, right? These are all things that investors want to understand so they can see exactly what they're investing in. How they treat their people, their suppliers, the people within their ecosystem. That's this social idea. And environmental is all the impacts such as energy, water, waste, carbon, chemicals management, kind of a slew. There's like a whole list, and we'll get to that in a sec. But if you go around saying, our purpose is to stop marine plastic pollution, right? But then if somebody, and the world these days it's really transparent, there's really no hiding. But if somebody goes to an event and they look at your slogan, no more plastic pollution in the oceans, and then they go to your event and they're noticing that there's single-use plastic everywhere, that is a risk. So do you see how it's really important that you not just say it, you got to walk the talk, and this is the depth. And now that we've sort of talked about like, what pressure points are you feeling? Who are you feeling it from? What are they caring about? And then you sort of start to understand, all right, well, our purpose strongly leans towards educating children or working with people from underrepresented communities, right? There's a natural tie-in that's going to flow because of your business model or your leadership ethos. You're going to gravitate towards a few areas, but to sort everything out, you've got to put a strategy together. And that's what today's kind of, now we're getting into the meat of it all. And as I kind of joke, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? Like, it's not easy, but if you just take it step by step, you'll get there. And again, I have opportunities for you to take notes away from this in the blog post that I have to help you through assessing, analyzing, prioritizing where are you going to put your time, talent, and treasure and focus on first, and engaging internally and externally is so very important to build momentum around your strategy. So when you are assessing your organization, and this is what your bigger clients are doing, right? Because there's regulations asking them what, to assess themselves and share with the world, essentially, what are their impacts, both environmental and social. So what they use is a third-party framework. They're not, because you want to make sure that you are being as transparent and authentic as possible. And there's a lot of great frameworks out there. Again, you'll see all these links are on the blog. There's free tools the B impact assessment. Has anyone heard of the B Corp certified program? So when you go to, like the next time you go to Whole Foods, there's a lot of products there that have this logo here. That means that they have gone through a rigorous assessment. It's really the gold standard of sustainability assessments that's free. And it helps companies understand their impacts. It's a very rigorous assessment, but it's online. You can go for it. And then if you hit a score of over 80, you can submit your assessment to be certified. So they have like only about 10,000 companies, no, I think 8,000 companies have been certified over the history of this organization, but several 100,000 organizations have gone through the assessment themselves. Steffi, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. With many of these assessing companies, they get paid, and then what I understand is, I'm just going to pick Whole Foods since you mentioned them. So they can say, okay, yeah, we do all this, so now, and then they basically pay the money, and then they can put that seal on their door. So that's what I hear, a lot of these certifications do, which I find, very sad, because in the end, okay, big companies, they pay a lot of money, and they basically self-assess for the most part. So which of these are really good?
So that's what I was saying, why you don't want to self-assess, you want to use a third-party framework. So you can't get this logo, the B Corp certified logo, without going through the nonprofit that's the governing body. It's called B Lab. They actually look at your entire company's assessment and will ask pointed questions, show us the documentation behind this claim, right? So to get this, it's a very rigorous process.
Okay, but it still depends on your own assessment. So if they ask me, okay, show me, that you recycle or whatever, and then I say, yes, here, you see that. Or do they actually come in as a kind of like undercover assessor?
Yes, actually, they not undercover, they will make site visits to specific types of companies. Yeah, they do. I have a lot of confidence in this assessment, the B impact assessment. If you recall the pyramid structure, right? Like walk the talk, that the bottom part of the pyramid, those are all the details that these assessment tools, if you're going to become certified. So you can self-assess just for knowledge, right? But if you want the certification, because I could do this B impact assessment for each one of your companies, but you're not allowed to use the logo without going through the next step of their certification process. So it's a very good tool. This SDG Action Manager did I answer your question, Steffi?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, we're all in this chat, we're all obviously for this. So, I just feel like we need to find out which, what's a really good certification versus, the ones that you mostly pay for. I just feel like everybody wants to jump on this bandwagon of sustainability, right? Like, oh, it's a good marketing tool these days. Great. So, I find it sad that, yeah, sometimes, I mean, there's just so many organizations out there right now that assess and that try to do good things, but like, so we have to also, somehow there has to be governing body that says, this is really good, and they're stringent with it, and they do it all, and the employees do it, and through and through. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. So there is a governing body for that. So if you're making a claim here in the United States, and that says that you're, you're making a claim, let me think of one, that your the plastic packaging that you use is biodegradable, right? If you're making that claim and somebody in the public questions that, they can go to you can go to the Federal Communication, the FCC. They have something called the Green Guides. And for example, a company cannot just say, we're eco-friendly, right? A company has to define what that means. We are eco-friendly because we have zero carbon emissions, right? And if you don't believe that claim is true, you can notify a district attorney in California, would chase that one, especially around plastic and being a biodegradable packaging, that's already happened in California. So you can actually take it to governing bodies to have them question that claim. So the FTC, with the Green Guides, excuse me, I've got my federal organizations mixed up. They will penalize companies for making false claims. So they're risk.
Can I ask a question here? Because I remember, old guy that I am, when I was a kid, that actually happened. There were advertisements on television that made claims, and then like 2 weeks later, that ad disappeared. And in some instances, companies went bankrupt because their claims were so outlandish that people called them on it, and the government stepped in and shut them down. But I've seen people make claims today, and I think this kind of speaks to Steffi's point, and nothing happens. And then on top of that, when it comes to certain certifications, I don't know, many of them don't carry the weight that you would like the certification to carry, where someone will see it and go, wow, I need to check this out, because that certification means that this claim is important and significant, because the claims that we can make with our system sound so over the top that that's pretty much what people assume. They assume that our claims are so over the top, and then some of the certifications are extremely expensive. It's unrelated to sustainability, but it has to do with hygiene to get those certifications. And it's like only the biggest corporations or very well-funded startups can fork out that kind of money. And I mean, in the tens of thousands, in the upper tens of thousands. Our interest is not so much in like the operations of our companies, but the claims related to what our system does in terms of saving water and energy and chemicals and these things in a really huge way. I mean, way beyond what industry people would expect. And so credibility is a big thing. It's huge.
Which is why we always suggest going with, these types of third-party frameworks that are rigorous. And that's what these suggestions are. So if you're in the supply chain of, sort of this manufacturing side of the house,
Right.
EcoVadis is a European framework that, they rank companies like tier 1 through tier 4 suppliers against each other, right? So it's also a sales tool in a way, where a Boeing, say, comes in and they're like, we are looking for parts manufacturers that have above a certain score through the EcoVadis channel, that it creates that competition to be more sustainable. Okay. But for this, the purpose of today's, and Steffi and Mark, thank you so much. There is a lot of greenwashing out there, but there are laws to govern against these claims, and the government is for the Green Guides. They're redoing them because it's been 10 years, and so hopefully those will be released later this year. But it literally says in you cannot say the word green. This is a green product. This is an eco-friendly product. Those are like danger words in the FT. It's right there in the guides. So you need to have that that criteria, that qualifier to back that up. So these are some 4 different types of frameworks. The SDG Action Manager is related to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is not this is not a certification. This is a tool to help with your internal assessment. And all of these are tools to help with your assessments. Just this, you can become certified. And then this one, don't do it unless you're being asked to, or if your company is, this is they're very, very rigorous. You have to submit tons of documentation, and there's costs associated with this one. And then the B impact assessment too, if you're going through the certification. But unless you're being asked to, or it's good for your business model, this one is very, very rigorous. But if you're just trying to understand the lay of the land, this will help you. If you're more advanced, you can do an ESG materiality assessment based on other frameworks. We do these for companies, but you would hire a third party to help you with that one. So again, all those resources are on that website. You can click on, check them out. So once you sort of have assessed how your organization operates, right? Then you can sort of look at the gaps and opportunities that exist for you to make improvements. And this is, we're going to kind of roll through what ESG is. Talked about it earlier. These frameworks ask you questions. Tell me about your board. How is your company structured? What is the diversity of your board? Tell me about pay equity, right? What is your biggest, your top paid executive making as opposed to the lowest wage worker? Who are you contributing your money to around politics, or what are you lobbying on? Do you have a public campaign where you are saying climate change is bad and you're doing everything you can to stop climate change as a company, but you're contributing to policymakers that are voting for practices that are undermining efforts to stop climate change, right? See, they're very deep dives. What kind of policies do you have in place to help govern your organization? And who's sort of overseeing your sustainability initiatives? Hopefully it's as high as a level of your a board member. You're also being asked about the people that work for you. How diverse are they? What kind of opportunities are you providing for them? What does your employee handbook look like? What kind of policies do you have in place? Who's making sort of your little widgets or products? Do you know your supply chain? Is your supply chain diverse? Are you helping lift up underrepresented communities by making your purchases from women and minority-owned businesses? Product safety, of course, as you know, there's so many lawsuits out there around product safety, data privacy, customer privacy, community impact. These are all the questions that you're asked in these frameworks. And then this is sort of self-evident, your environmental impacts as a company, and even what are the environmental impacts of your suppliers, people who are making things for you or that you're bringing in to help with the service that you're providing. So these are the questions that you'll be asked, and then you'll analyze it. Like, do you even measure your carbon emissions? Do you know what your electric bill is? Things like that. So it's really great to do sort of the B impact assessment just as a kind of a quick pass through to understand where are you with answering these really tough questions and where could you go with them? Because it's a multiple choice question and it gets more progressive. The questions get more progressive. So are you tracking your carbon footprint? And then like 3 steps down, it's okay, great. If you're tracking your carbon footprint, have you made a net zero commitment? Right? So it creates a roadmap for you to see what are the best practices out there that are achievable for you. William has just noted us that he's had to jump. So thanks, William. I don't know if you are still on. All right. So now that you have all this data, right, under the ESG categories, you have a ton of data. How do you prioritize what comes next, right? And so this is where, and I wasn't sure in giving this talk today, are you all service companies? Do you manufacture products, right? So I'm going to try to address both because they're very different business models, but I'm going to try to address both in this diagram. So if you want to start a sustainability strategy, say you're a clean beauty company and you're very concerned about plastic packaging, and it's critical because your packaging can impact your organic formulas. So you want to get your packaging right and make sure your customer is having a good experience, right? And your logos on the packaging and things like that. So one of the things you want to do is understand the landscape of packaging around clean beauty products. What's out there? What's innovative? What does it cost? What are my competitors doing, right? What are the aspirational brands doing? So do a landscape assessment to understand what are your choices out there. But think circular. What if individual product packaging isn't the best method? What happens if you can get into a refill shop and just send bulk packaging to the refill shop and encourage your customers to go to the refill shop to fill up on their shampoo? Or go to a salon and have the salon sell in bulk for you, right? So now you're starting to cut down the amount of single-use plastic packaging you're using, as well as your carbon emissions, because you're sending it to like the last mile, right before the last mile point of a supply chain. You want to try to understand who's making your packaging, right? Whatever packaging you decide on, what kind of standards do those factories have? Who is making the packaging? You know, are there little fingers making the packaging? That could come back and haunt you, as the Nike case study from the late 1990s did, when it was, you know, unmasked that children were making Nike products, right? And that tanked the brand for a while. Certifications and assessments, like Steffi said at the top of this aspect of the conversation, you know, like, how do you know it's real, right? So there's over 450 types of assessments that we've tracked out there. Which ones are the ones that consumers value the most, that resonate with your brand the most? Those are things that you need to think about. By doing those assessments that we talked about previously, you'll start to understand your environmental impact and be able to say, all right, if I install LED lights, I'm going to save on electricity. It's a big upfront cost, but over the next 5 years, it'll balance out, right? These are where you're starting to make those decisions. Maybe I'll install a low flow toilet or low flow taps at the sink. That's what this means. And then as you get more confident, you can say, all right, I'm getting some good vibes from my employees who like the direction we're going, from my customers like this direction we're going. I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive with my targets. And I'm going to try to be zero waste in my operations, right? So the momentum starts to build as you deepen your engagement here. But you can't do it alone. You need your community. So you activate them, storytell, and I have some slides with ideas there. I do think that this philanthropic aspect is very important. Customers, employees like, this way of giving back to the communities through product or volunteerism or financial donations. And then you have to tell that story because you're doing something you're proud of and you want to perpetuate that and expand it. So either you're trying to draw customers to you by telling your story. We are the most sustainable organization in our industry because of, and Steffi, this is for you, we do X, Y, Z, and here's our report that backs it up, right? This is a differentiating strategy here. So this is sort of how you operationalize your strategy. Once you sort of start to figure out where am I going to target? Any questions? All right. So this idea of engaging, that last little quadrant, how do you continue that momentum so that you can continue to put back into your sustainability strategy? Because it is an effort, and I'm not lying. It's tough, but it is incredibly rewarding. So first you need to sort of think about your stakeholders, right? Who is it you want to message to? What is it they care about? Kind of reflects that hexagon shape we had at the top of this conversation. You know, your employees, customers, your local communities, who are you talking about? And Marianne, as you had said earlier, right? Like that organic conversation. Are you meeting your audience where they're at? are you starting to lead them along where the opportunities are? So this just kind of is a little checkpoint of possibly who you would be working with. And here's ways that you can let them know that you have a sustainability strategy. It's a journey, not a destination. You're not perfect. You're doing the best that you can because you also are trying to run a business, right? So, you have a little website that talks about it. Sometimes it helps if you've got a green team so that they can work on portions of your strategy to have cross implementation, speak at different events, post on social media, publish that impact report that's data, hard data that backs up your claims. That's a safety net for you. A call to action for your stakeholders is also great, right? So as I mentioned earlier, Costa Kick Plastic is the name of their campaign. And now when I first started with Costa, they didn't know, right? They hired the organization that I was with because they're like, okay, we're really concerned about marine plastic pollution. What can we do about it? And, then it was that they did an assessment of the single-use plastic they had at their office within their distribution center. They started to reduce it. And every time I came into the office, they'd be like, hey, look at my reusable water bottle, Lia. I was like the plastic police walking down the hall. And now all new employees are like, love the Kick Plastic. Of course, there's no water bottles at Costa events. And I don't have to say a thing. So that's how it sort of perpetuates that kind of it really helps if you can kind of call out one point to get started on, just something that works. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, like, are you helping underprivileged children, right? Like there's a calling that each of your organization has, and focus and hone in on that, and everything will ladder up underneath. So ultimately, through your leadership, you're going to shift culture and drive impacts. And let's talking about leadership. This is where your team needs to kind of take some of these, I guess, hints, I don't know, like tools that I'm providing to you, and think about it, right? Like, take that assessment, understand where the gaps are, and start to lay out your strategy. And with that, you can't do it alone, right? You have to have this culture come along with you. So there's internal teams, external organizations. They all will want to help you if you tell them how. And then, of course, again, like the base of that pyramid, don't make any claims without being able to back it up, because you will get in trouble, right? The light of day will shine on those dark corners. So that is why E, S, and G exist, right? To highlight, and there's no company that is perfect, right? Not even, love Patagonia, but not even Patagonia is perfect, right? They've gotten great strides and they're paving the way for so many. But it's really important to assess your data, track your data, and be transparent about it in as many appropriate situations as possible. So that's kind of the meat of the conversation. We have just 8 minutes left. Does anyone? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen. Did everyone join the chat after? Anyone join the chat after I posted the link with the resources?
I may have.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put that again so that that's where the resources I was talking about are located.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, great, thanks.
Awesome. So it's a lot, but there are steps. And so it really starts with that assessment.
I took 2 pages of notes.
And obviously call me up if any of you can just call me up and say, I'm stuck, where do I go from here? This is what I'm doing. But it really is just take the time to do one of those assessments. The B impact assessment is just so straightforward. It's rigorous, and just be like, all right, I'll come back to that question. I don't have that data. Come back to that question. Yeah. It's a great tool.
Well, this was a lot of very useful information. Before we end this, here's your opportunity. Anybody have any other questions for Lia?
My focus is different in terms of not being on our corporate operational aspects, but in terms of the impact it has, in the environment and in business because of the characteristics of the products. My background started at University of Florida in the 70s because we had a dean in the School of Architecture that said, since he became dean, he was going to make sure that every project that was designed made good use of the natural resources, were very efficient, kind of a waste not, want not. I mean, words like sustainable and green and all this didn't exist. There was zero political aspects to this entirely. It was just about, okay, you're going to capitalize on the sun. We're in Florida. There's lots of it. We're going to capitalize on the wind. And there were incredible projects that were developed. And the thing that really impacted on me was the fact that almost all of them were more economically viable. And that's very different than I see with a lot of initiatives that are kind of forcing an aspect related to sustainability, which has led to, I think, a great deal of greenwashing. I've seen just so much of it. As I've spoken to potential clients and I ask them about their email signatures, I don't believe that. They just make me put it there, And so, I like an approach that's just much, much more simple. Some of those things seem pretty invasive, like the questions that an organization would be asking me, and some I think are actually pretty personal. And I just like to see products and services developed that are very, very efficient, make great uses of natural resources. And I think it's a really simple message that communicates really easily. And, that's where I'm looking for help. How to communicate something as simple as that, but do it in a way that's very credible. I mean, I'll give like one example. There's massive waste of water in washing flatware. So we have the system and it doesn't reduce water waste by 10 or 20 or 30 or 40. It's like almost 80%. Well, nobody believes that. I mean, nobody believes that. And so they ask for all sorts of testing. Of course, when you show it to them on site, they become believers. But, that's a whole lot more intensive in terms of cost and travel than to be able to communicate a powerful message in a very credible way. So that's really where I'm looking for help. And I assume there are some certifications that would do that. I'll look into the ones that you listed.
Are you with Curve? Is it Curveware?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I checked your company out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are a first mover in the market, right? So it's very hard to do what you're doing, So sounds like that it's another conversation about marketing. The grassroots marketing might be the ticket, or getting out into events or things like that.
Yes.
This organic,
or even videos. I mean, I don't know. Have you done any videos?
Yeah, we have, and I've got a collaborator in Miami now who has been in hospitality a long time. We're talking about just that. So doing dinners, doing events, and testimonials, interviews, some of those can have quite a bit of credibility. Like I felt that one of the most credible things we did an event was I walked into the back of the kitchen and spoke with the dishwasher, and he's wondering, what the heck am I doing there? And I interviewed him because it made his life so easy. And he was thrilled. And it wasn't a CEO of an organization, wasn't the general manager of the resort. It was a dishwasher who nobody ever asked to speak with, but I felt that was, pretty impactful. But yeah, we need more of that. And But you mentioned a really big thing. There was a book written by a PhD, and I think it was Sweden, launching radical innovations. Her first chapter is why almost none of them succeed. And it's true, because there's great resistance to changing something, getting people to embrace a change where there hasn't been any change in like 500 years when it comes to a fork, spoon, and knife. But, we kind of know, this is why I reached out to one of our listeners here, is because it's special events where they want to do something that's like no one will ever forget. I've called people up. I put the company on hold for 16 years, called somebody up. I've done this a number of times. No, I don't remember your name. But you remember these utensils? That nobody forgets the utensils because they're that different. So there's value there when it comes to special events and things like that. But
Have you, so, I mean, I don't want to take everyone's time to,
No, I
having
apologize.
another call with you and we
Yeah,
can,
it's interesting.
yeah, I mean, I just talking about, the big F&Bs out there, just thinking of Aramark or things like that, how those are the adopters, maybe you just gotta
Nah, they're really not. I went down that path. They're the 800-pound gorillas that are really dangerous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, clearly, much more, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
I think
again, I don't
we
want to take.
talk on another, feel free
Yeah,
to, and let's take it
I
offline.
will. Yeah. I appreciate
Because obviously I see your product and what it does is really remarkable with, the way that it's been
Well,
demonstrated in your videos.
the only other person I would love to maybe connect you with is Molly from Sodexo. And she is a member of SENFC, and she is a very big proponent of sustainability. Sodexo,
That's great. Thank you.
she's in the Orange County Convention Center.
Mhm.
Sodexo is also in the Miami Beach Convention Center, and both centers are very, very, very sustainable. So just working
Yeah,
with like-minded people. And
absolutely. Right.
Molly is amazing. And I think I also, like you said, it takes time. I mean, all of us who are on this call are passionate about sustainability, whatever area it is. And we can all remember back in the day when it was the green movement and everyone was talking green. And
Right.
the general public was, I don't care about that. You guys are all, tree huggers, whatever. Now, there is a call to action because climate change is real and people are actually seeing it.
Well,
They're
the interest is
experiencing it.
definitely there because I put the company on hold for almost 17 years. And then I had a stockholder in Florida because I started the company in Florida. I'm looking to relocate back to Florida. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Florida stayed open. So, there's hotels and resorts and all these locations that are really our market. But two stockholders called me up and said, gosh, we think that maybe you were just 20 some years ahead of your time because we're having all these water and energy savings. Oh, it was of interest to hoteliers and restaurants, but as a talking point, it wasn't driving any decision making. Now it's driving decision making, and that obviously makes a big difference.
Well, I'll certainly keep your product in mind for the conversations that I have.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
times
what's the
change.
product? I don't think I know.
Oh, I'll stick it
it's,
in.
Yeah, it's curveware.com. So CURVWARE. So it's curve without the E. So CURV.
What is
Oh, it's a system that consists of, okay, it consists of these utensils, right? So there's a fork, and they're extremely comfortable. In fact, that's why they were designed. They were designed to be more comfortable than traditional flatware. In fact, they made their way into the Smithsonian Institution's Cooper Hewitt Design Museum for that reason. An ergonomist proposed it. They wouldn't answer my phone call practically, but when the right person, this is the value of trust and relationships, when they asked an ergonomist about real ergonomic products, he recommended our product. The next thing you know, the director was calling me. So, but it's part of a system. So when you have a crazy thing like this, it's like, okay, how are people going to believe it? Well, they're going to believe if they use it. And to use it, you have to be on the tables of events in restaurants. And so, that's where I went into a restaurant and said, okay, I figured out how to make this work in the front of the house. And I asked the first GM, can I talk to your dishwasher? And I went in the back of the house and I saw how they washed eating utensils. And most people would probably rather not know, because if you saw how eating utensils are washed, you understand why, anybody older than 20 that eats out regularly has had to ask for a clean fork. But the stuff that can get you really sick, you don't even see it or feel it on that fork. So, but hygiene, which we solved the hygiene problem, every piece comes out sterile, but it's not a marketing tool. I mean, it's not a marketing feature. So with, sustainability, water savings, it can be leveraged for marketing purposes. And so anyhow, that was it. We developed the ancillary products so that we wouldn't have people like cursing at us that had to handle it and wash them and store them. And I just took the same approach that we were taught at the University of Florida. Make this more efficient, make it more effective. And they waste massive amounts of water washing eating utensils. They run them through multiple times to get them clean. And all that's eliminated. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox here.
But it takes innovation and just really thinking outside the box, like clearly you do, but getting it to market, that's tough. But what you're doing right now, like making those connections and relationships to drive that.
Well, I look forward to speaking with you, Steffi, and speaking with Molly. Do I just find Molly's contacts?
She should be in our directory, in our membership directory. So if you go to senfc.org and go to membership, Molly, and I apologize, I can't think of her
I'm sure
name
I'll
right
find
now.
And I'll tell her that you suggested that I reach out to her.
Yeah. And she's
Okay,
with
great.
Sodexo Live. Let her know you're an SCNFC member and
I will.
that good stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to do education like these sessions. We're trying to network and we're trying to, have conversations where we can support each other and just help the cause.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe just to, add, change the subject a little bit, but I think in general, from my experience, when everybody wants to do good, nobody wants to be the polluter, whether it's a company or on a personal level, everybody wants to, be good. All my friends, all the business, they want to be sustainable.
They all say that.
But here's what it comes down to for everybody. I mean, including us, maybe to a lesser degree, but nevertheless, two factors that hinder us from being really, really good. One is convenience and one is money, right? So I think if we address this with the companies, I mean, that's always like when they save water and they want to save electricity because really it saves them money. Fine.
That's
And
right.
I've come, to the conclusion that fine, if that's, that works for you and it works for the environment, we're all happy. It's a win-win. But that's always pretty much the driving factor. Convenience.
Absolutely.
Take a look at buses.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'll tell you something that's really been frustrating for me, and this would maybe be the basis for a good conversation. We did an event in Las Vegas before I put it on hold for 17 years. There were 400 people, and it was because an influencer, the producer said, I want these things on the table. I heard that the banquet manager and all the staff, they weren't happy. They saw pictures and images and they're thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to set the table? How are we going to collect and wash this? Oh man, what is this guy doing to us? After the event, they all came up to me and they're slapping me on the back, and the banquet manager is telling me like I'm a hero, because beforehand they made all these assumptions that it wouldn't be convenient. It would be very inconvenient. As it turned out, they were able to set the tables at a fraction of the time, collect them, wash them in a fraction of the time. But, it takes time to educate people. And unless you have somebody who's very credible or somebody who makes it happen, like if a bride says, I don't care what anybody thinks, I'm putting them on my tables, that bride's going to get what she wants because it's her day, right? And then everybody else will kind of come around from that, which is why, since picking this back up again, I've realized the importance of relationships with the right event planners, because once you get good PR and publicity and the right messaging is getting out there, then things can start to move. So, and then money, like I think, gosh, I apologize again, but I got in an argument with somebody when they were talking about money and the price of our product. I said, show me one other product where you're cash positive the day you sign the lease agreement for our product. Just show me one, and they can't. And so the problem is when you have an innovation where there's a standard, everybody has in their mind all of the factors associated with that standard, what it costs, how it's paid for, everything. And so they don't assume that you've innovated in other ways other than just a shape of a utensil. But anyhow, I again apologize for.
Well, thank you all for this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about, help tell you about our organization, help support your own sustainability journey. I'm around if you have any questions. I'm super happy to answer.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Leah, thank you, thank you, thank you. As we had said in the beginning, this was recorded. It will be up on the website within a week. So if you want to go back and look through any of the presentation, just to get it back fresh in your mind, feel free. And I just want to thank you all for your time and the conversation. This is what it's all about. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.